Namaskar, this is Shivangi Mukherjee and welcome to another episode of Bharat, the Forgotten Chapters. When you look at India's map today, Sikkim seems like it has always belonged there. But here's the twist. Until 1975, Sikkim wasn't even a state of India. It had its own king, its own flag and its own government. For almost 3 decades after independence, India had a tiny Himalayan kingdom sitting right on its doorstep. And if China had managed to pull Sikkim into its orbit, India's entire northeast would have become dramatically more vulnerable. So how did this tiny Buddhist kingdom become India's 22nd state? Was it a democratic merger, a strategic necessity, or was it one of India's smartest geopolitical moves? To understand that, let's rewind. Sikkim wasn't just another Himalayan kingdom. It was geography's favorite child. To its north lay China and Tibet. To its south lay India. To its west Nepal and to its east Bhutan. Whoever influenced Sikkim, you see, gained a front row seat to the Himalayas. And even the British realized this. Back in 1774, Governor General Warren Hastings identified Sikkim's strategic value. The British didn't want to annex it. They wanted something even bigger. A buffer state to keep an eye on China. Small enough to control, but large enough to absorb any trouble. This was classic British foreign policy. If we can't own it directly, we'll own its decisions. Sikkim officially became a kingdom in 1642 when the Namgyal dynasty was established. That dynasty would rule for 330 years. But British influence kept growing. The Treaty of Tatalia in 1817 restored territory to Sikkim after wars with Nepal. Sounds generous, except there was one catch. Sikkim now had to pledge allegiance to the East India Company. The British gained trade access and route towards Tibet. By 1861, after the Anglo-Sikkimese War and the Treaty of Thonglong, British control became even stronger. A British political officer was stationed in Gangtok. Sikkim was effectively reduced to a protectorate. Not exactly independent, not exactly British either, just strategically useful. Then came 1947. India became independent. Hundreds of princely states had to choose. Option 1, join India. Option 2, join Pakistan. Or option 3, attempt independence. Sikkim chose hesitation. Its ruler, Chogyal Namgyal, wasn't keen on signing the instrument of accession. But here's where the story gets interesting. The king wasn't necessarily speaking for the people. Sikkim had 3 major communities, the Lepchas, the Bhutias and the Nepalis, who formed the largest population. Political parties representing all 3 communities increasingly demanded democracy, abolition of monarchy and much closer ties with India. In December 1947, they even passed a resolution asking for accession and reached out to Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru at the time for support. But Nehru wasn't too eager to force this issue. He famously believed the Sikkim should develop according to its own genius. During that time, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel and B.N. Rao were responsible for communicating with princely states for an Indian merger. So they had a large role to play in having Sikkim sign the Indo-Sikkim Treaty of 1950. This treaty made Sikkim an Indian protectorate. India now handled defense, foreign affairs, and strategic communications. But Sikkim kept internal autonomy. Think of it like this. Sikkim still owned the house, but India now held the security system, the front gate and the spare keys. At that time, that arrangement seemed sufficient. Then China changed everything. In 1962, India suffered a humiliating defeat against China. Then came the 1967 clashes at Nathu La Pass and Chola. Both fought on the Sikkim border. This time, India troops stood their ground and inflicted heavy losses on Chinese forces. The message became crystal clear. Sikkim wasn't just another Himalayan kingdom anymore. It had become one of India's most sensitive strategic frontiers. If a politically unstable monarchy sat between India and China, that was no longer just Sikkim's problem. It was India's national security problem. Meanwhile, in Sikkim, there was a new king after the death of its former ruler. And this new ruler, Palden Thondup Namgyal, who became Chogyal in 1963, increasingly pushed for greater independence of Sikkim. New Delhi, led by Mrs. Gandhi at the time, wasn't happy with this. She realized what Sikkim meant for India, especially with the dragon breathing down India's neck. By the early 1970s, pro-democracy movements led by political parties in Sikkim were gaining strength, and India naturally preferred democratic forces over an unpredictable monarchy on its northern border. According to historical accounts, Indian officials, including personnel linked to RAW, worked with pro-democracy political groups to help unify anti-monarchy forces. Then came 1973. Mass anarchy protests erupted. Thousands surrounded the royal palace. Ironically, the Chogyal had to call India for protection. Now imagine asking the very neighbor you're trying to keep at arm's length to rescue your throne. That decision changed history. It gave India a bargaining chip to leverage. India deployed troops to protect the monarch. Now, as a result of this mass dissent in Sikkim against the monarchy, a tripartite agreement was signed in 1973 between the Chogyal, the Government of India, and Sikkim's major political parties. Fresh elections were announced. And in 1974, the Sikkim Congress won decisively, headed by Kazi Dorji. A new constitution came into effect, which drastically reduced the monarch's power to a titular post. Then came the defining moment. The 1975 referendum, which decided if Sikkim would join India. More than two-thirds of eligible voters participated, and the results were astounding. An astonishing 97% voted for the monarchy to be abolished and for Sikkim to join India. Not by military conquest, nor by annexation, by referendum. Within days, the Sikkim Assembly formally requested accession. The Indian Parliament passed the 36th Constitutional Amendment in 1975, where Sikkim officially became India's 22nd state on May 16, 1975. This day is celebrated annually as Sikkim Day. Now, what was China's reaction to all of this? China obviously wasn't happy. For decades, Beijing refused to recognize Sikkim as part of India. It only extended formal recognition in 2003, and even today occasionally uses this issue as diplomatic pressure, as seen during the 2017 Doklam standoff. China even went to the extent of warning India during Sikkim's accession, but India stood its ground, especially after China's stance on Tibet. But more on that in another episode. Sikkim wasn't just absorbed into India. It was the product of centuries of imperial politics, Cold War era geopolitics, China's growing threat, democratic aspirations, and India's determination to secure one of the most strategic pieces of the Himalayas. And that's why, when you look at India's map today, that tiny state tucked beneath Tibet isn't just another border. It's one of independent Bharat's most consequential geopolitical successes. Now, if you've stayed this far, I have a little quiz for you. Which day is celebrated as Sikkim Day? And what is the name of the act that allowed for this? If you know the answer, please write down your response in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.